Good afternoon, and welcome to Reclamation's History Webinar Series, Reclamation's Museum Property. This is a monthly series as we build towards Reclamation's 120th anniversary on June 17, 2022. This event is being recorded. If you are not interested, please disconnect at this time. If you're having technical issues, please disconnect and join again. Additionally, you may have better success connecting to the Team app on your computer and not in the web browser. We'll be taking questions as we have time at the end of the presentation. Please click on the question bubble in the upper right-hand corner. We will do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Today we are joined by Reclamation's historian, Dr. Andrew Gahan. Dr. Gahan?
Thank you, Peter. Greetings and welcome to this month's History Series presentation. Some scholars have suggested that what binds us to the past are memory, history, and relics, while some, including myself, can argue over the veracity of memory and history. Relics provide us with tangible evidence of the past and the workings of our ancestors. Today, we will examine Reclamation's efforts at curating those artifacts of the past and how they add to our understanding of not only Reclamation history, but also the American West by looking at Reclamation's museum property program. I am pleased to introduce another cohort of mine from the Cultural Resources Management Program, Cara Hurst, Reclamation's National Curator and the coordinator of the Native Americans Grave Protection and Repatriation Act. Cara has been with the Bureau of Reclamation for the past 5 years and brings with her a wealth of talent and experience, but this is not her first stint working for Reclamation. Previously, she had served as an intern in the Museum Property Program at Reclamation Oklahoma area office. In addition, Cara was the supervisory register for the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian and worked for the BLM in its Utah state office as state curator. Cara received a BA in anthropology with a focus on archaeology from Pacific Lutheran University, along with a master's degree in museum science from Texas Tech University. I might also add that Cara is a child of the arid West, growing up in Montana with family roots to the Greenfield Irrigation District on Reclamation's Sun River project. So, without further ado, Cara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon. My name is Cara Hurst, and I'm Reclamation's National Curator and Coordinator for the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. Thanks so much for joining today. We're going to look at some cool things, but also discuss the business side of my program. We have ancient bison latifrons specimens from the southeastern Idaho that the Snake River Area Office worked to digitally scan so you can print 3D scans at your local library. How cool is that? We have a guard badge and original entry tickets from Hoover Dam. We have archaeological stone tools. This is a mono or hand stone used for grinding corn. We have Plesiosauridae specimens from South Dakota. That's a Triassic era sea creature you wouldn't want to meet while snorkeling. So let me tell you now about some of the nuts and bolts of Reclamation's museum program. We're within the Environmental Compliance Division of the Policy and Programs Office. The Museum Property Program supports regions' activities and needs through advocacy, technical assistance, and policy development, as well as coordinating data calls, annual reporting, and audits. Museum collections come in many forms. Those held by Reclamation consist primarily of archaeological objects and their associated records, but also include natural history specimens, historic objects, documents, photographs, and art items. Reclamation has almost 9 million museum items. That's right, 9 million, which is the third largest bureau collection in Department of Interior. From the image, you can see the reported quantities from FY21, with archaeological items making up 82% of the total. Museum property is a component of Reclamation's Cultural Resources Management Program. The goals of the Museum Property Program are to 1. Improve management of museum property in accordance with laws, regulations, and department and reclamation policy. 2. Increase security and protection of museum property. And 3. Raise awareness of and improve access to museum property. Reclamation reports on its museum property to the department's Interior Museum Program, which was established primarily in response to 2 reports issued in 1987 and 1990. The 1987 report, produced by the GAO, cited a government-wide lack of accountability for museum property. The 1990 OIG audit found that DOI possessed a material weakness based on the ways it accounted for, curated, and protected its artwork and artifacts. A direct result of the reports was 36 CFR 79, Curation of Federally Owned and Administered Archaeological Collections, published in the Federal Register on September 12, 1990, with corrections issued a month later. 36 CFR 79 is important in numerous ways, not least because it applies to both new and pre-existing collections. It developed minimum standards of care, and federal agencies were identified as responsible to preserve collections of prehistoric and historic materials and associated records recovered under pertinent authorities, such as the Antiquities Act of 1906 and the Archaeological Resources Protection Act of 1979, or ARPA. Are you still with me? Audits and Federal Register notices can be a bit dull. So here's a picture of my new puppy to make sure you're still paying attention. Okay, where was I? I mentioned the Interior Museum Program. Collectively, the department manages one of the world's largest museum collections, 74 million cultural artifacts and natural history specimens, and 91,000 linear feet of archives. That's over 17 miles, housed in 2,000 federal and non-federal facilities. The collections are held in trust for the American people. Reclamation's cultural resources staff work tirelessly and are passionate about their work. During FY05, Reclamation established the Museum Property Working Subgroup under our Cultural Resources Management Working Group, with members from each region and MSO. This subgroup's continued purpose is to advise and assist policy and programs in identifying and developing policy, directives and standards, and guidance for the management of museum property. Regions and MSO can also request assistance from program leads in ECD. These 2 photos span 40 years of cultural resources staff. On the left, you can see the staff in February 1979 at the Denver Federal Center. And on the right, you can see most of the CRM working group, comprised of the regional archaeologists, regional museum and NAGPRA leads, and policies program leads. Our group was hosted by California Great Basin in November 2019. Like everyone, we have adjusted and adapted to maximum telework, with the positive being that ECD hosted a Reclamation-wide 2-day cultural resources meeting in January 2021 on Teams, something we haven't been able to do in person previously, with almost 50 CRM professionals across Reclamation. Okay, so we have 9 million items. We have to track it all somehow, right? In FY09, DOI deployed a data management system known as Interior Collections Management System, or ICMS. It remains the required and supported software to be used by all DOI units managing museum collections. I look forward to the department's next iteration of museum collection software, which is currently in the works. 1993 was a busy year. 411 DM came out. Reclamation developed some formal documents, such as a collections management plan and scope of collection statement. We moved to digitize our records, and surveys were conducted to locate reclamation museum property. Later, RM policy and DNSs were developed. Over the years, there have been both minor and major revisions. We also have a few standard operating procedures and other required departmental documents. A direct link to museum property includes museum collections subject to the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. NAGPRA items include human remains, funerary objects, objects of cultural patrimony, and sacred objects. NAGPRA items considered museum property collections would have been collected prior to the signing of NAGPRA on November 19, 1990. NAGPRA implementing regulations have different subparts for items collected prior to the signing and after the signing of the Act. Consultation is integral to agencies fulfilling NAGPRA responsibilities, and Federal Register notices are required for repatriating NAGPRA museum collection items back to Native American tribes. Reclamation actively consults with Native American tribes in good faith efforts. NAGPRA is managed by the National NAGPRA Program under the National Park Service. ECD completed development of reclamation-specific training in 2011 that is available on DOI Talent. It was an honor that Betsy Chapoose of the Ute Indian tribe of the Uinta and Ouray Reservation and Jackie Cook of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation helped guide the instruction and participated in the training videos. NAGPRA coordination is under the Museum Property Program. Now, I'd like to touch on some of the specific disciplines of museum property. We'll start with archaeology. The image is of an obsidian biface preform from the collection of the Snake River Area Office in CPN. This tool is a bit like the Swiss Army knife of stone tools for Native American hunters. You could chip off a small portion and make an arrowhead, or a scraper to clean an animal hide, or chip away at a larger portion to make a spear. Archaeology is the study of ancient and recent human past through material remains. Archaeology analyzes the physical remains of the past in pursuit of a broad and comprehensive understanding of human culture. Archaeology is a diverse field of study. Most archaeologists focus on a particular region of the world or specific topic of study. Archaeologists may study human remains, animals, plants, stone tools, or other specific topics. Some archaeologists specialize in technologies that find, map, or analyze archaeological sites. Cultural resource management, known as CRM, refers to the work archaeologists do in compliance with laws. In these pictures, on the left, you can see an unprocessed archaeological collection awaiting attention. You'll note the numerous labels on the boxes, probably stemming from the initial field collection decades ago, and brown acidic boxes, which are no longer used because the acidic components degrade. And on the right, you can see Dr. Jason Lavelle, curator at the Archaeological Repository at Colorado State University, show a properly cataloged archaeological collection packaged in archival boxes. Paleontology is a scientific study of ancient life, from dinosaurs to prehistoric plants, mammals, fish, insects, fungi, and even microbes. Paleontologists work to extract the fossil remains from the surrounding rock and substrata. On the right, you can see how paleontology fieldwork uses a variety of tools to excavate fossils from the ground. Paleontological collections of dinosaur and mammal fossils may be very small, but often can be large and do not fit in boxes. They can be incredibly heavy, yet also fragile and require special supports, like the white fiberglass two-sided supports called clamshell jackets that you see here. This preventive conservation project was undertaken by archaeologist Nikki Poulsen from the Upper Snake Field Office for Reclamation Collections at the Idaho Museum of Natural History in Pocatello. History collections relate to reclamation's past and include items that provide evidence of or are representative of historic activities related to reclamation. This is a 1939 silver platter, about 15 by 24 inches, with dozens of signatures of employees of Consolidated Builders, Inc., builders of the Grand Coulee Dam, who gave the platter to their project manager, Edgar Kaiser, of what became Kaiser Permanente, for Christmas. The platter was donated to Reclamation in 2011 by his daughter, Miss Gretchen Kaiser. Although Reclamation has archival records of employees, there were thousands of employees of private companies that helped build Grand Coulee Dam, which makes this platter a unique treasure. And here you can see the names identified of the employees that signed the silver platter. My thanks to Jacob Miller and Derek Berry at Grand Coulee Dam office for identifying the names and sharing this information. Another example of historical items are original models, most of which are in Building 56 at the Denver Federal Center. But the Cordes Dam model is on exhibit in Denver at Building 67 on the 14th floor outside the break room. Many of the models were built by Julius Pete Ambrush. Pete kept detailed records of his projects, creating essentially flipbooks of photos showing the construction of his models. His family donated Pete's archives to Reclamation in 2017. Now I'd like to spend some time talking about the art collection and Reclamation's art program of the late 1960s. However, before we go too far, let's take a step back to consider from a broader perspective what was happening. An environmental awareness was emerging in American culture. As noted by Dr. Gahan in the Bureau of Reclamation from Developing to Managing Water, 1945 to 2000, teams of archaeologists, biologists, geologists, and historians surveyed reservoir sites to document cultural and natural history prior to construction, and that Reclamation's work presaged policies and programs that moved beyond salvage work at dam site locations to statutes requiring the federal government to protect cultural resources on federal government property. In the 1960s, due to concerns from environmentalists, Reclamation altered plans and removed 2 proposed dams from the Central Arizona project. Shortly after, following more than a decade of effort, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, was signed into law on January 1st, 1970. It should come as no surprise then that a softer side of Reclamation was projected. Lloyd Goodrich, previously director of the Whitney Museum of American Art, noted in the American Artist and Water Reclamation exhibition catalog that Reclamation's art program can be seen as a logical revival and continuation of an historic governmental art activity. He appears to be drawing upon the goodwill garnered from the Works Progress Administration's Federal Art Program of 1935, which employed 5,000 artists and generated almost 250,000 artworks for the American people. Indeed, 13 WPA artists were also employed under Reclamation's art program. In that same publication, Douglas McAgee of the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden at the Smithsonian Institution waxes poetic on artists working in nature and almost scornfully addresses landscape art, such as the 1970 Spiral Jetty by Robert Smithson in Utah's Great Salt Lake, and the 1972 Valley Curtain by Christo and Jean Claude across Rifle Gap in Rifle, Colorado, merely referred to as a canyon span of banners to catch the wind's mischief, and gaudy cloth torn away by a gale. Indeed, he likens the paintings of Reclamation's art program to ephemeral works that betoken a return to Romanticism within a modern context, with Reclamation having an enlightened approach in developing an art program. Reclamation's art program commissioned artists to visit its water resource development sites throughout the western United States and paint whatever captured their imaginations, whether it be an irrigated farm, a canyon, a canal, construction scenes, or power plants. However, the artist could best translate their experience in an abstract or realistic vision, as long as the subject matter pertained to reclamation. Artists would visit the areas to which they were directed. As Mr. McAgee notes, like the painters of the Old West, everybody brought a sense of ingrained style. And, above all, perhaps the observer may be impressed by the creative magnetism of the scenery, which surrounds and seems to overwhelm the technical edifice. Aside from the initial exhibition at the National Gallery of Art in DC, a Smithsonian traveling exhibition circulated the collection to 7 different museums, with the goal of showing the productive results of Reclamation's water development projects. The art collection is now managed by the Mission Support Organization, or MSO, in Denver. Romanticism aside, the impressive array of artists, mediums, and themes make this collection a lasting snapshot in time. Let's take a look at some of the art. This is Lower Colorado number 4 from the series of 8 of the same name. Born in Portland, Oregon, Richard Diebenkorn developed his own style of abstract expressionist painting. In the late 1960s, his work turned toward abstract geometric forms. His Oak Park paintings were highly celebrated and grew out of his 1970 Lower Colorado works for reclamation. In his own words, he said, "The project I was assigned to was the Salt River Canyon in Arizona. We spent 5 days in a helicopter surveying it. In one place, we landed on the top of a towering pinnacle overlooking the river. The pinnacle actually had a surface of 1.5 acres. I did some drawings, or rather paintings on paper there. We were supposed to do documentary drawings, but mine came out as abstract and impressions. I think the many paths or path-like bands in my paintings may have something to do with this experience, especially in that wherever there was agriculture going on, you could see process, ghosts of former tilled fields, patches of land being eroded." This is Tule Lake Refuge by John W. McCoy from the Klamath Project. Born in California, McCoy's family moved to the East Coast from the Brandywine River Valley in Maine. McCoy was tutored by N.C. Wyeth and later married his daughter, Ann Wyeth. Early on, McCoy embraced realism and later moved toward abstract expressionism, experimenting with mixed media and pours, dripping and floating paint on canvas. Andrew Wyeth credits McCoy with being an influence in his own artistic style, but undoubtedly, the family influence from the Wyeths also influenced McCoy's work. This is On Hungry Horse Reservoir by Ethel Megaphon from the Hungry Horse Project. Born in Colorado, Ethel and her twin sister Jean pursued their artistic talents from their early school years. Commissions for post office murals marked her early work, whereas later she focused on references to Colorado's mountainous terrain, spending summers here. After leaving Colorado in the 1940s, she called Woodstock home. Ethel Megaphon represents just one of 2 female artists in Reclamation's art collection, the other being Ethel Edwards. This is Double Spillway number 1 at Boca Dam by Roland Peterson. Using bold color and geometric forms, Peterson is a Bay Area figurative art school artist who flourished and continues to paint daily. His signature style of color and perspective began with his picnic series in the early 1960s. He was a member of the University of California, Davis art faculty from 1956 to 1992. This is Judge F. Sees Primary Forms from Shasta Dam, also by Mr. Peterson. Reclamation has 13 paintings by him. I reached out to Mr. Peterson's gallery representative, but was unable to get a response on whether Mr. Peterson could join us today. However, from a video conversation last fall during a retrospective exhibition of his work, I'd like to play a small section where he recounts his time working for Reclamation and how it influenced his continued work.
Pyramid Lake
Yes.
from 1972, and it looks like in the early 70s you did a shift, and you really came to a kind of a geometric hard edge painting that was very, very firm, very much about color. Tell me how that change came about and how those paintings happened.
Well, at the time, I had a grant with the Bureau of Reclamation to document the dams on the West Coast. So this is a takeoff on the sketches that I made traveling up and down the coast, documenting the different dams. This is
This is High Scalars by Fletcher Martin. Born in Palisades, Colorado, Martin was a mural painter with the Works Progress Administration, with his works highlighting Western subjects. Here is Street Scene Grand Coulee by Hereward Lester Cook. He was born in Princeton, New Jersey in 1916 and was a curator of painting at the National Gallery of Art from the mid-1960s to mid-70s, among other positions there. Cook's success may have been more visible in his art history publications, but he was also well regarded as an artist. In this piece, the dominant movement is vertical, with all the signs spiking upward, piercing the white, unmarked sky. The multitude of signs, combined with the sketchy nature of the drawing, give it a sense of energy. This is Black Waterfall by Lamar Dodd. Dodd was born in Fairburn, Georgia, and was in his early 60s when he participated in Reclamation's art program. He was active in the art world his whole career, having chaired the art department at the University of Georgia from 1939 and continuing there until his retirement in 1972. The School of Art there is named for Lamar Dodd. Here you see him working at the third power plant, Grand Coulee Dam, in October 1970. In 1942, Ansel Adams photographed then named Boulder Dam, shortly after its construction. Photographs of Boulder Dam were to be included in a proposed mural for the main interior building in DC. But due to the start of World War II, the project wasn't completed. This photo and others are available in the public domain through the National Archives. 25 years later, Norman Rockwell painted this image for Reclamation. Rockwell was one of the best-known artists that participated in Reclamation's art program. Here you can see his mixed media painting, Glen Canyon Dam, which includes gravel incorporated into the lower portion of the painting. He viewed the dam from many angles. And the Navajo family of John Lane, with whom Rockwell is pictured with in October 1969, were his models for the large 4 by 6 foot canvas that he completed in his studio in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Rockwell, like all artists that participated in Reclamation's art program, signed purchase order agreements, which are work for hire contracts, and transferred copyright of the artworks to the federal government. The artworks in Reclamation's collection are national treasures, and we are actively working with a contractor to take high-resolution digital images and reframe the entire collection with the goal of making it more accessible, either through use of originals or reproductions in the future. Thank you for joining today's talk, and I hope you enjoyed learning about the cool things we manage in the Museum Property Program. I'm happy to take questions now, or please feel free to contact me later. Thank you again. Peter?
Thank you, Cara. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please click on the comment bubble in the upper right-hand corner. Cara, I'll begin with a question that I have. What do you see as the most unique item in the museum collection for Reclamation?
That's tricky. So, you know, the second slide that I had for this presentation, I tried to show just like a multitude of different things. We have 9 million items. We have so many different things. It's really hard to say what is kind of the most unique. It really depends on the person.
Thank you. We have one question. How large are some of those art pieces? Some are so very detailed. Just wondering if they are small but very detailed.
Some are small. Some are like from sketchbooks, actually. We got some of the drawings that later became paintings. So we have some that are just like sketchbook size, little bit larger than a standard piece of paper. And there's a few paintings that are absolutely huge. There's the Norman Rockwell painting that's 4 feet by 6 feet. But there's some that are probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet by 8, maybe 9 feet. Some are huge, some are small.
Thank you. If as a reclamation employee, if we're out and we find human remains, what do we do with them, or how do we handle that?
Right, so it really depends on the landowner. So if you're on reclamation land, what I would say is call your regional archaeologist first. You have my contact information, so if you don't know who your regional archaeologist is offhand, feel free to call me, and I will also get in touch with the regional archaeologist first. And then there's certain steps that we take to protect the human remains and make sure we consult with tribes in a very speedy fashion too. The regional archaeologist will also know whether or not it would be appropriate to contact law enforcement. There sometimes are more recent human remains that would not be subject to NAGPRA that law enforcement would then need to manage.
Thank you. If someone wanted to see the Rockwell painting, where is it housed at this time?
It's currently on loan to the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
There were skulls shown earlier. Are those cattle, longhorns, something else?
Skulls.
I think going back in your presentation.
Paleontology.
Paleontology.
Yep. So those were on the paleontology slide, and those are prehistoric mammals. So bison latifrons is one of the prehistoric mammals that we have out of Idaho. Some of those are at the Idaho Museum of Natural History. And some of those also are available for 3D printing. So you can get on the webpage that I had on that page, and you can even download a copy of the digital scan for yourself.
We'll try to share that here with everyone before we leave. I'm looking at it right now. Can you speak about the rules that govern current acquisitions? Is there someone who we should refer people to if they want to make a donation to the museum property program?
Sure. Again, you can talk to your regional archaeologist. For CGB, we have a regional museum lead. Her name is Michelle Noble. And so she would be the contact for CGB. We have a museum lead for MB, and that position is currently vacant and hopefully will be refilled soon. But if you don't know who to turn to, please do reach out to me, and I can walk you through the different process steps and get you in touch with the right regional folks.
On that, to print the item in 3D, it was embedded in the image, Cara. I couldn't get it out. If people are interested, can they reach out to you?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. Does Reclamation offer viewing of the art, or is it loaned to museums to view, or where are the various artworks located?
Right now, because we're working on this digitization and reframing project, most of the artwork is in Denver. There was some on loan to California. That's come back to Denver for our project. There's a couple pieces up in CPN in the regional office. There was about 56 pieces, I believe, out in Washington, in DC, at the main interior building on loan. And those are actually, they just came off the wall last week, I think it is. And they're being packed up and coming back here for the digitization and reframing project.
Once that digitization and reframing project is complete, will those be going back to those locations and people can view them in those offices?
MSO manages the art property collection, so they're the best ones to ask. Jim Kiefer. Again, if you just want to use my contact information, I can connect you to the right people. I imagine there's many ways and many avenues that we can use to share that art collection.
And thank you, especially after we have the digitized images of those.
Exactly.
Are there any initiatives to build more museum space to display more of these incredibly interesting artifacts? You mentioned we have 9 million of them.
I would love that. It takes a lot of money to build a museum. Right now, we have partner museums throughout the West that manages a lot of Reclamation's museum property. So different universities, different museums manage our collection and other federal collections too, with their own collections. So we have a total of 74 repositories, mostly non-federal, that we use for Reclamation collections.
Are there any artifacts available from the Blackfeet Nation in Montana?
That's a great question. I don't know offhand, but please feel free to reach out to me and I will connect you to the right people that can answer that question.
Where can we find that list that you just referenced of museums? The list of museums. List
of museums where we have collections. It's not really a public list that we have. I'm happy to share it. It's not like the collections are, have big signs saying this is Reclamation property. Our collections are managed in concert with those museums' own collections. So we have some at like the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, DU Museum of Anthropology, Museum of the Rockies, Burke Museum up in Washington, Idaho Museum of Nature and Science, Natural History Museum of Utah. We work with many partners, so if you're interested in knowing a specific one, or if you have a question, reach out and I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Okay. To break up all the questions coming in about art and the museum program, what kind of dog do you have? What's his name? If you said I missed it, cute. This is the right question.
Yeah, her name is Minnie. She is 12 weeks old. My 4-year-old daughter, who loves Minnie Mouse, named her. So Minnie is a Labradoodle, and she's stuck in her kennel right now while I'm talking.
Otherwise, I think she's probably your intern for during the day, I'm sure.
She is. Yep. She has her own little bed here at my feet in the office.
If Reclamation employees, for example, we have a visitor center or office and they want to display some of these museum items, who should they contact and work with?
If it's well, again, you can start with me. I can reach you out to the correct person. It depends on the region and what you're looking to borrow. If it's the art, it is MSO, and I can forward any emails to Jim Kiefer and MSO. If it's other materials, again, that would vary depending on the region.
What determines whether a particular piece goes to a reclamation program, DOI, the Smithsonian? Just checking on what determines that.
Right. So how are acquisitions managed? So it really depends on the donor, right? If the individual that has something wants to donate it to the Smithsonian, they'll reach out to the Smithsonian, who may or may not accept it, right? Like when I worked at the Smithsonian as the head registrar for the National Museum of the American Indian, we managed all the acquisitions that came into that museum. We accepted very few that actually were offered to us. But one thing that I would always try to do was give donors another avenue for donating whatever neat thing they wanted to help preserve in a museum. So if something came to me here at the Bureau of Reclamation and it deals with, I don't know, NASA, let's say, I might decline it and say, well, here's a contact that you can reach out to at NASA, and I think the object might be more appropriate there. So we have the scope of collection statements, which I mentioned earlier, and those really provide a framework for identifying what would be appropriate to add to our collections, because we don't actually really ever get rid of our collections. There's very few reasons that we would ever get rid of a museum property item. So when we take something, it's a very thoughtful process that we go through.
Another question is, are artifacts from reclamation lands put in reclamation facilities or reclamation affiliated museums, or just stored at the archives or other storage?
Right, so if there's artifacts that come from reclamation lands, reclamation manages those. And so we would try and put those into a repository that is most appropriate and probably located nearby to where those collections were first found. So if there was something found at, let's see, in Utah, we wouldn't go to, say, the Burke Museum in Washington and say, can you hold these collections on behalf of reclamation? We would go to one of the nearer museums, like Natural History Museum of Utah, and work with them, one of our current partners, and say we've got some additions to the collection and put them in that facility. We do have, I should say, we do have collections in a few area offices, but generally most of our collections are in non-federal repositories.
Thank you. Another question, what interests you most, or what do you like most about your job? Do you collect interesting items yourself?
I have a few interesting items. When I was doing archaeology field work, obviously you're not going to be collecting archaeology. There are certain laws and surrounding those things and the appropriate management of those resources. But I actually started collecting some more contemporary Native American pottery. So that's been kind of my thing, is a few pieces of Native American pottery from contemporary artists.
Do you think there's a possibility that Reclamation would sponsor the creation of more art as it did before?
I love that idea. I think it would be a monstrously huge lift. There's been a lot of laws that have come into place kind of since then. More stringent copyright laws, so I doubt we would ever be able to get copyright again. Visual Artists' Rights Act. You know, it would be fascinating if we could pull something off like that again. But I don't know if it would be possible in this current climate.
What is the most recent item you can think of that was discovered and added to the collection?
Well, actually, one of them you got to see already. The archival binders, there was about 3 or 4 of them from the family of Pete Ambrush that had all those old black and white photos that Mr. Ambrush took when he was creating those really large working models of dams. So that flip book of photos that I showed, there's like a whole binder of those. It's fascinating to see how he documented his work in creating those models. So that's one of our more recent acquisitions.
Is there a museum at Hoover Dam that people can visit?
There are museum collections at Hoover Dam, and some of them are on exhibit in the visitor center. So right now, the visitor center is undergoing a new look. It's being updated, so I don't think it would actually be accessible right now, but probably late this year, maybe early next year. I don't exactly know the time frame. There are some pieces there that would be going on exhibit.
Another question, we've been throwing away a lot of old photographs and older files. What is the correct process for archiving these paperworks?
That's a great question regarding records management. It's a tricky fine line sometimes between really cool old documents and what's an official record and what is just a duplicate. You're welcome to reach out to me if you have a specific question, pertaining to your situation that I can help with. But you can always just reach out to your regional archaeologist too, and your regional records management officer.
And we just have a couple more minutes for questions. I have one more. If you have any other questions, please submit them now, and we'll finish up this hour. It's been real interesting. But one more question at this time, Cara, is: has any of Reclamation's items had research done, or will research be done, to see if any of the items belong to tribes? And if found, would they be returned to the correct tribe?
Great question. So NAGPRA, Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, has subpart B and subpart C in the regulations. So under subpart B, anything found since November 19th, 1990, there are certain steps that we take in our consultation with tribes in management of those objects. Those never become museum property. Under subpart C, things that were found prior to the signing of the Act, November 19th, 1990, those actually had always been part of museum. They'd been added into museum collections. So under NAGPRA, there are certain steps that we've had to take and we continue to take in working with tribes, consulting with tribes, and working to repatriate the items that fall under NAGPRA, which is human remains, funerary objects, objects of cultural patrimony. And I just blanked on the fourth one. I'm sorry. Sacred objects. Thank you. So we work with tribes to find the most appropriate route to move forward on repatriation of those items back to Native American tribes.
I have another question here. What are the biggest needs associated with the program?
The biggest needs right now are staffing. You know, a lot of the museum property actions are undertaken by our archaeologists out in the field at regional and area offices. So it's often a collateral duty, and there's only so much time in the day. So I think I would say staffing is where I would love to see things stepped up if possible.
We just had a message from Hoover. The exhibit is currently open. We'll close early next year and be closed 6 to 9 months. More museum exhibits will be on display. So just the update from Hoover, like the real-time updates coming in here. So
awesome, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and close the questions and thank Cara for joining us today. I'm going to put Cara's contact information up there if you need to get that. I also shared it in the chat back to everyone. Once again, thanks to Cara and Dr. Andrew Gahan for the speaking today, and I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Our next presentation will be at the end of February. I think it's the last Thursday of February. We are going to discuss the history of Reclamation's binational work with Mexico. So that will be coming. Once again, thank you to our presenters, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.